everyone, my name is Cyrus and welcome back to my channel. Now I've been thinking a lot lately about how I really love to read, and I've loved to read for most of my life. But I have many friends who really want to get into the habit of reading, and they really struggle with either getting into reading or making the habit stick once they've started. So I wanted to make a video where I can just give some suggestions and tips and tricks on things that I think would be helpful on if you're either trying to get into reading for the first time in a long time, or you're trying to make the habit stick because you've not really been able to make it stick before in the past. So I'm going to split this video up into 3 sections: what to read, when to read, and how to read. And my favorite tip is going to be coming right at the end. So let's start off with what to read. This can often be one of the hardest parts, especially when you're trying to get into reading, because there's just so many possible options in terms of what to read. It's truly overwhelming, even for a person who reads. There's so many things out there. Just so many books, so many stories. And so when you're trying to get into reading and you have no idea where to even start, it can truly be overwhelming, and that can even be the barrier that blocks you from even starting the whole journey of getting into reading. So hopefully we can get some ideas and tips and tricks here on what to read when you're trying to figure out where to start. Often one of my first tips and tricks is to not bite off more than you can chew, especially when you're just getting started. It might be tempting to come in and you've heard about this huge epic fantasy series or this really great classic book. Often those things are really large. And so if you're jumping in and you're trying to read a 15-book series or a 1,000-page epic, it's going to feel insurmountable. It's going to feel like it's going to be so hard to finish that book, and you're not going to be able to kind of push past that. Now, some people will. I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but in my experience, that's not going to be the norm. And so I don't feel like you're setting yourself up for success if you're trying to start out with one of these huge epic fantasy series or a huge classic novel. I'm not saying never read these books, because I truly love some of these books. Some of my favorite books of all time have been really long fantasy series or huge epic classics. But let's not make this the first dip into the water. Instead, I think you should be aiming for a short to medium length book, something in the range of maybe 200 to 400 pages. Aiming for that kind of length, preferably a standalone book. That's not a requirement. You can pick a series if you're finding a series that you find really, really interesting, but I think the important thing here is that you make sure that if it is a series, the books are in that 200 to 400 page range, and again, preferably a standalone. The reason for that is because these kinds of books you'll be able to get through a little bit faster, and once you finish your first book, you're going to get that dopamine hit of, oh man, I just finished my first book in a long time. And that's going to give you that little bit of a push that you need to go to the next book and finish the next book after that. So preferably 200 to 400 pages is kind of the range that you're aiming for. Okay, so we've got a range and size now. Now the question is, what book to actually read? Now, I've always been a big proponent of going to your local libraries, talking to the librarians there. Often, if you give them the kind of idea of what you like, they can often provide you a couple of good recommendations. If you don't want to go and talk to a person, then you can look at Goodreads or Storygraph, kind of get an idea of maybe what the most popular books are over the past year. Even sometimes Reddit, you can find some good examples of suggestions of books you can read on Reddit. But honestly, my main advice is go to your local library or your local bookstore and walk around the sections. Think about the movies or TV shows that you really like. Do you like action movies? Do you like romance movies? Go to those sections in the bookstore and start walking around the sections. And contrary to what we were told as kids, judge the books by their cover. If you see a cover that stands out to you that looks really cool, pick it up, read the back of the book, and once you find something that matches, has a cool cover, has a cool description, take that book and give it a try. So, now you've picked out a book, and the question becomes, when are you going to read that book? This is also an area where it's very easy to come up with excuses to why you're not reading. Life can get really busy and it can be hard to find the time to read sometimes. But hopefully, I can provide a couple of suggestions that might help you find some time and deviate some different time into reading this book that you want to read. If you're transiting into work, it's a really good opportunity to read on your way into work, on your way out of work. It's going to really give you an opportunity to get through a lot of a book if you're reading while you're doing your commute. Another option is, instead of reaching for your phone when you realize you're about to reach for your phone and start doom scrolling, instead reach for your book. Now, this can be a hard habit to break, especially if you're in the habit of doom scrolling through TikTok or social media, but it could be an added benefit of stopping some of your wasted time on social media and at the same time reading a book at the same time. So that's one that can be a bit of a hard habit to break, but if you are able to make that change in your mind to, oh, I'm bored, instead of grabbing your phone, grab your book and start reading your story, that'll be a really good win for you. But honestly, my main piece of advice in terms of when to read, because I can get that life gets busy, sometimes it's fun to just doom scroll on your phone a little bit. So I always tell people, read before bed. I think reading before bed is an awesome opportunity to read your book. The majority of my reading that I get done happens right before bed. I always have my book on my bedside table beside me, and I always read it before bed every single night. And it's a really easy thing to build into your habits as well. And I think there's a couple of benefits to reading before bed. One, there's plenty of research that shows that looking at your phone or some kind of screen right before bed is very detrimental to your actual sleep and the quality of sleep that you're getting. So putting your phone away, not looking at screens for a little bit before bed and reading your book instead is just priming your body for a better sleep. Two, this is a time where you're gonna have the least amount of distractions. Everything else is done for the day. You're just laying in bed, you're all alone or with a partner laying in bed, and you have the least amount of distractions. So it's way easier to just grab your book and read because there's nothing else going on that's gonna distract you from that. And three, I find for most people, reading, especially right before bed, can help you get sleepy and help you have a really good sleep. I find for myself that I'll typically be able to read for maybe 15, 20 minutes before my eyes start to droop as I'm reading. And that's a perfect sign. Throw the book to the side of the table and fall asleep. It's really nice. It's a really good way to kind of help you fall asleep. And especially for someone whose mind wanders a lot right before bed, having a story to read and distract your mind a little bit as you're getting into that kind of zone of sleep can be super helpful in terms of helping you fall asleep. So my main piece of advice in terms of when to read is read right before bed. Okay, so we have our book, we know when to read it, and now we need to talk about how to read it. And so obviously if you made it to this point in the video, I know you know how to read, but what I'm talking about here is a bit more of the process of reading. In my books, getting more people into reading is a huge win. So reading whatever way that you will benefit from it is the best thing to do. If that means that you're listening to audiobooks, then listen to audiobooks. Audiobooks are great. I love listening to audiobooks, especially when there's a really good narrator. It really adds a lot to the story and it can in fact improve a story a whole lot. And it makes it really handy. You can listen to audiobooks while you're doing the dishes, while you're doing all these various chores, while going on a walk. It's a really nice way to kind of incorporate two things. You almost feel like you're killing two birds with one stone. So audiobooks are a really good medium, but I also really encourage you to branch off into the physical, actual reading, the physical media of reading, because I think there's a lot of benefits to actually sitting down and physically reading a book. When you're reading a book physically, it's a lot easier to process the information that you're reading about and remember things that you're reading about. And also, it requires you to slow down and just focus on your book. And I think nowadays we don't slow down nearly enough, and so anything that requires you to do that, I think is a really useful exercise for us to push our minds to focus on one thing that's right in front of us and to slow down and kind of close out the other noise of the world. And so reading physically is a really great way to do that, whether that's reading through an ebook where you can break down a lot of other barriers that way because you can have a lot of books in one space. It's very accessible in the sense that you can really up the font and all that kind of stuff. So ebooks are a great opportunity. I've always preferred physical books myself, but any way that you're able to sit down and read a book physically, I think is a huge win and something that you should really be proud of yourself to do. And finally, my largest piece of advice in terms of how to read, and we're talking about making the barrier to entry as low as humanly possible here, is to read 5 pages a day. If you commit to yourself that you're going to read 5 pages per day, it's super easy to do that. It'll take you 10, maybe 15 minutes to read 5 pages. You can do it during your lunch break. You can do it right before bed. But if you tell yourself, I'm going to read 5 pages per day, sometimes that's it. Often, you'll read the 5 pages and you'll want to continue reading a little bit more after that, or at least that's the goal. But even if you don't, and you just read those 5 pages per day, by the end of the year, you'll have read over 1,800 pages. Now that's a lot of books. And so just 5 pages per day, if you build that into a habit, you're going to get into reading and you're going to be a reader. 1,800 pages in a year, you're a reader. And that's just 5 pages per day. And so I think 5 pages per day is something that you can tell yourself that's going to be a low barrier to entry. It's going to make your mind think, yeah, I can read 5 pages per day. Anybody can do that. And by the end of the year, you'll have read so many books, and all of a sudden, just like that, you're a reader. So if you've been struggling to get into reading, or just not sure where to start, I really hope this video has helped you. Go to the library, find a short book that looks fun, and read 5 pages a day before bed every day. Do that, and in no time at all, you'll be flying through books. I really hope this video helps at least one person, because there are just so many great books and great stories out there to read, and if I can get one more person into reading, then that'll be a win for me. If you have any tips or tricks, please put them in the comments below. Let's make a repository there of tips on how to get people into reading and just how to get into reading in general. And Until next time.